The metal chair felt cold against Zephyr's damaged shell. His three good arms rested on the table while his mechanical fourth arm clicked softly in the silence. The interview room smelled of recycled air and fear. Across from him sat Velinara, the council's top record keeper. Her blue skin looked pale under the harsh lights. "Tell me about the humans," she said quietly. Zephyr's compound eyes flickered. Old memories stirred like angry insects in his mind. He had hoped never to speak of those terrible years again, but the council needed to know. The galaxy needed to understand what they had faced. "We thought they would be easy," he began. His voice sounded rough, like grinding metal. "Small creatures, soft skin. No natural weapons, no advanced technology, how wrong we were." The Catherian veteran shifted in his chair. The battle scars on his chestplate caught the light. Each mark told a story of human violence he wished he could forget. "It was 2387 when we first met them. Our empire had conquered 47 worlds. We ruled half the galaxy. These humans lived on one small, blue planet at the edge of nowhere. They had just learned to travel between stars. We expected them to bow down like all the others." Velinara made notes on her datapad. "What happened during first contact?" Admiral Krexenor sent the usual message, "Submit or be destroyed." "Most species choose to submit. The smart ones surrender before we even land troops. But these humans ... double closed." His mechanical arm tapped faster against the table. "They sent back a message. Just 2 words in their primitive language. We had to use translation software to understand it. The message said, 'Come try.'" The archivist looked up from her notes. "That was their official response?" Official response. From their military leader, a female called Jake Morrison. She commanded their Luna Base 7. Our intelligence said it was just a mining station with a few thousand workers. We thought it would fall in one day." Zephyr's natural arms flexed. The memory still made him angry. "Our second fleet moved in. 24 ships, 50,000 warriors, against one small base on their moon. It should have been a glorious victory. What went wrong?" "Everything." The word came out like a curse. "These humans fought like nothing we had ever seen. They used mining equipment as weapons. Turned their own base into a trap. Every corridor became a killing ground." The veteran's eyes went distant. He could still hear the sounds of that battle. Human voices shouting in their harsh language. The screams of his own people dying in ways that made no sense. "Captain Morrison held us off for 6 hours. 6 hours against a full battle fleet. Her people were miners, not soldiers, but they fought like demons from the old stories. When we finally broke through their outer defenses, we found something that still haunts my dreams." Velinara waited. She had learned not to rush these old soldiers when they spoke of dark times. The humans had rigged explosives throughout their base. Morrison waited until 3,000 of our warriors were inside. Then she triggered them all. The explosion could be seen from orbit. She killed herself and all her people just to take some of us with her. A suicide attack? More than that, it was a message. These humans would rather die than surrender. We learned later that Morrison had sent a transmission to Earth before she died. She told her leaders exactly how we fought, what weapons we used, how our ships moved. She turned her own death into intelligence for their war effort. The mechanical arm stopped tapping. Zephyr looked directly at the archivist. "That was when we should have stopped. Should have pulled back and found another way, but our pride was wounded. The Empire had never been defeated by such a primitive race." "So the war continued?" "High Command ordered a full invasion of their colony worlds. We had intelligence reports on their defenses. Weak shields, primitive weapons, small populations. It looked easy on paper." Zephyr laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "We attacked their colony on Kepler 438b, 500 human civilians living in domed cities. Our landing craft came down expecting quick surrender. Instead, we found Commander Lisa Rodriguez waiting for us. Another military leader? A teacher. She taught human children about history and warfare. When our invasion began, she took command of the colony's defense, used farming equipment and construction tools to build weapons. Somehow she had studied our attack patterns from Morrison's data. She knew exactly where we would land. The veteran's shell darkened with remembered shame. Rodriguez had turned their farming domes into fortresses, used irrigation systems to flood landing zones, set up crossfires using modified mining lasers. She had 500 civilians. We had 5,000 trained warriors. The outcome? We won eventually. But it cost us 3,000 dead and 15 ships damaged. A teacher and some farmers had nearly destroyed an entire Catherian battle group. When we finally took the colony, we found Rodriguez in the command center. She was still fighting with a broken arm and burns covering half her body. Zephyr paused. The memory of that human female still troubled him. Her eyes had shown no fear, only cold calculation and burning anger. She looked at me when we captured her, spoke in perfect Catherian language, said, "You have no idea what you started." Then she activated a hidden transmitter. She had been recording everything, every tactic we used, every weakness she found. All of it went straight to Earth. The humans were learning. More than learning, they were adapting. Each battle taught them something new about us, and they shared everything instantly across their entire species. Every human warrior could learn from every defeat. The interview room fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Velanara studied her notes while Zephyr stared at the wall. Both knew this was only the beginning of a very long and dark story. What happened to Commander Rodriguez? The archivist finally asked. Zephyr's mechanical arm began clicking again. She died in captivity 3 days later. Poison capsule hidden in a false tooth. But before she died, she told me something that still keeps me awake at night. What did she say? She said humans had been fighting wars for 10,000 years. Fighting each other, fighting their own planet, fighting everything that tried to stop them. She said we had just given them their first real enemy, and they were going to enjoy it. The veteran's voice dropped to a whisper. That was when I began to understand what we had awakened. Zephyr reached for the water container with his good hand. The liquid tasted bitter, but it helped his throat. Speaking of these memories was harder than he had expected. Velanara waited patiently while he gathered his thoughts. The worst came later, he said finally. High Command decided to make an example. Show these humans what happened when they defied the Empire. They chose Proxima Station. The veteran's mechanical fingers drummed against the table. It was just a mining outpost. 3,000 humans living in connected domes around a small star. They had no warships, no planetary defenses. Just civilian miners and their families. Why was it chosen? Location. Proxima Station sat on the main trade route between Earth and their outer colonies. If we destroyed it, we would cut their supply lines, force them to negotiate, or so our strategists believed. Zephyr's compound eyes dulled as he remembered. Fleet Admiral Vexver took 200 ships, the largest battle group ever assembled, for a single target. He expected the siege to last maybe a week. The humans would see our power and surrender. But they did not surrender? Major Danny Sullivan commanded the station. Former soldier turned mining supervisor. When our fleet arrived, he sent one message. He said the station would not surrender, would not evacuate. Any Catherian ship that came within weapons range would be fired upon. The alien veteran laughed bitterly. We thought it was a joke. What could miners do against a battle fleet? Sullivan had maybe 50 mining ships and some industrial equipment. We had enough firepower to crack a planet. What happened when the siege began? Sullivan had spent the 3 weeks since first contact preparing. Somehow he had studied all our previous battles, learned from Rodriguez's data, from Morrison's sacrifice. He knew exactly what we would do. Zephyr paused to take another drink. The memories were coming faster now, each one worse than the last. The humans had turned their mining station into something we had never seen before. Asteroid processing equipment became mass drivers, or refineries were converted into chemical weapons. They used their own mining tunnels as launch tubes for Missiles made from cargo containers, improvised weapons. Brilliant weapons. Sullivan's people knew their own equipment better than any military engineer. They made tools of peace into instruments of war, and they did it in ways we could never predict. The veteran's shell darkened with shame. Admiral Vexver ordered a standard orbital bombardment. Destroy the station's weapons and force surrender. But every time we targeted something that looked like a weapon, it turned out to be a decoy. The humans were using deception? Lieutenant Amy Patterson ran their electronic warfare. She had been a communications technician before the war. Somehow, she learned to hack our targeting systems. Make us see weapons where there were none. Hide real threats behind false signals. Zephyr's mechanical arm began clicking faster. Patterson would make entire sections of the station vanish from our sensors. Then they would appear somewhere else and attack our ships from behind. She turned their mining network into an invisible fortress. How long did this continue? 14 months. 14 months of the most horrifying warfare I have ever seen. The humans refused every offer to surrender, rejected every attempt at negotiation. They just kept fighting with whatever they could find. The veteran stood up and walked to the small window. Space stretched out beyond the station, cold and empty. He wished he could forget what had happened in that darkness so long ago. Patterson led boarding parties using nothing but magnetic boots and improvised explosives. She would walk across empty space in a thin suit, carrying bombs made from mining charges. Somehow she got inside 12 of our ships. She survived these attacks? All of them. The humans had studied our ship designs from captured data. Patterson knew exactly where to place her explosives for maximum damage. She would cripple our vessels and escape before we even knew she was there. Zephyr turned back to face the archivist, but the worst part was not the attacks. It was what they did to our minds. Psychological warfare. Sergeant Bobby Chun took over their communications array. He had been an entertainment technician before the war. His job was maintaining their music and video systems. When the siege began, he turned those systems into weapons. The aliens. Compound eyes flickered with remembered horror. Chun would broadcast human music across all our frequencies. Loud, violent sounds they called death metal, but that was not the worst part. He mixed in recordings of our own warriors dying. Cytherian screams and human laughter played together in horrible combinations. This affected your forces? Our warriors began having nightmares. Some refused to leave their ships. Others would panic during battle when they heard those sounds. Chun somehow learned that music could be used as a weapon against mines. Zephyr sat back down heavily. Then there were the messages. Chun would paint words on the station's hull using the blood of our dead warriors. Messages in perfect Cytherian script. Threats, promises, descriptions of exactly how they planned to kill us. What kind of messages? Welcome to hell, we are. Waiting for you. Your families will never know what happened here. Things that made no military sense but struck terror into our hearts. The veteran's voice dropped to a whisper. The humans had learned that war is not just about destroying enemies. It is about breaking their will to fight. They turned fear itself into a weapon. How did the siege end? After 14 months, Admiral Vexver finally ordered a full assault. Every ship, every warrior. We would overwhelm the station through pure numbers, end this embarrassment once and for all. Zephyr's mechanical hand clenched into a fist. Major Sullivan knew we were coming. Had been preparing for this moment since the siege began. When our assault fleet reached the station, he gave us exactly 30 minutes to retreat to safe distance. A final surrender offer? A warning. Sullivan had spent 14 months modifying their fusion reactor, turning it into the largest bomb ever created. He was going to destroy the entire system rather than let us win. The interview room fell silent. Velanara stopped taking notes and stared at the veteran. The humans were willing to destroy themselves? Not just themselves, everything. The station. The asteroid belt, 3 nearby planets with mining colonies. Sullivan planned to turn their star into a nova and take half the system with him. Zephthyr's voice cracked with emotion. We retreated, lost nearly half our fleet to human weapons. During the withdrawal, and as we limped away, Sullivan sent one final message. What did he say? See you at the next one. Velenara set down her datapad and rubbed her tired eyes. The humans learned from each battle? Learned is too small a word, Zephthir replied. His mechanical arm whirred softly as he gestured. They absorbed everything. Every tactic we used. Every weapon design, every mistake we made. Then they made it all better. The veteran moved his weight in the chair. Old battle wounds still caused him pain after all these years. After Proxima Station, High Command thought they understood human tactics. We developed new strategies, better weapons, improved defenses. We were certain the next battle would be different, but it was not. Colonel Kevin Wright proved us wrong again. He commanded the human defense of New Geneva Colony. Our intelligence said he was just a logistics officer, someone who managed supplies and equipment. We expected an easy victory. Zephthyr's compound eyes dimmed with the memory. Wright had been studying the wreckage from our previous battles. Pieces of destroyed Cytherian ships, damaged weapons, broken armor. He somehow learned to understand our technology. Reverse engineering? More than that. Wright had taken our designs and made them work better. Our plasma rifles became human plasma cannons with twice the power. Our shield generators were turned into portable fortresses. Our communication systems became their electronic warfare weapons. The alien shook his head slowly. In 6 months, Wright had equipped his people with weapons that were half human, half Cytherian, and completely deadly. When we attacked New Geneva, we found humans using our own technology against us. How was this possible? Dr. Maria Santos was Wright's science officer. Before the war, she studied alien artifacts for human. Universities, peaceful research, archaeological work. When the fighting started, she became something much more dangerous. Zephthyr's voice grew quiet. Santos could look at a piece of broken Cytherian equipment and understand how it worked. Not just copy it, but improve it. Make it do things we never imagined possible. What kind of improvements? She took our shield generators and turned them into weapons. Created energy fields that would tear ships apart from the inside. Used our medical scanners to target specific organs in Cytherian bodies. Made our communication devices broadcast. Signals that could drive our warriors insane. The veteran stood and walked to the wall. His reflection looked back at him from the polished metal surface, scarred, broken, a reminder of human ingenuity. Santos understood something about war that we did not. Every tool can become a weapon if you think about it the right way. She taught other humans to see technology as pieces of a puzzle, mix them together in new ways, and create something terrifying. The humans were innovating constantly. Every day brought new horrors. Captain Ryan Brooks turned our cutting tools into melee weapons. He would board our ships with modified Cytherian plasma saws and fight us hand to hand. His people seemed to enjoy close combat. Zephthir returned to his chair. The memories were getting harder to tell, but Velenara needed to hear them all. Brooks had studied ancient human warfare, learned about boarding actions from their old naval battles. He applied those lessons to space combat, used our own airlocks against us, turned ship corridors into killing grounds. They fought inside your vessels with enthusiasm that scared us more than their weapons. Brooks would lead charges through narrow passages using nothing but blade weapons and improvised armor. His warriors painted their faces with Cytherian blood and screamed battle cries in their primitive language. The alien veteran's shell grew darker. But the worst part was not how they fought. It was how they treated prisoners. They tortured. Captured Cytherians? No, they did something much worse. They studied us. Commander Helen Davis ran their prisoner operations. She had been a teacher before the war, someone who worked with young humans to help them learn. Zephthyr's mechanical fingers began tapping again. Davis would spend hours talking to captured Cytherian officers, not interrogating them, just talking, learning about our culture, our fears, our weaknesses, psychological analysis. Davis learned that Cytherians valued honor above life, that we feared shame more than death, that our social structure was based on rigid hierarchy and absolute obedience. She used all of this against us. The veteran's voice cracked slightly. Davis convinced 12 of our officers to change sides, not through torture or threats, through logic. She showed them data proving that the Empire was doomed, that fighting humans was suicide, that survival required cooperation. Defection? Treason. Davis turned proud Cytherian warriors into human allies using nothing but words and evidence. She gave them new identities, new purposes, new reasons to live. Zephyr looked directly at the archivist. Those defectors taught humans everything. Ship designs, military codes, tactical procedures, battle plans. Davis had weaponized our own honor system against us. This was effective, devastating. Within 1 year, humans knew more about Cytherian military operations than most of our own officers. They could predict our moves before we made them, counter our strategies before we implemented them. The interview room felt colder now. Velanara's blue skin had grown pale as she listened to the account. Davis created something that had never existed before. Humans who thought like Cytherians but fought like humans. They could anticipate our every move while remaining completely unpredictable themselves. A hybrid enemy. The perfect enemy. Commander Pete Richardson led one of these hybrid units. Half human tactics, half Cytherian knowledge, completely ruthless. His forces could speak our language, understand our culture, and exploit every weakness we had. Zephyr's compound eyes focused on something far beyond the room. Richardson's people would dress in captured Cytherian armor and infiltrate our bases. They looked like us, moved like us, spoke like us, but inside they were still human. Deception operations, terror operations. Richardson's infiltrators would sabotage our equipment, steal our battle plans, and assassinate our commanders. All while pretending to be loyal Cytherian soldiers. The veteran's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But the worst thing Richardson did was send messages back to his superiors, detailed reports on Cytherian psychology, our fears, our breaking points, our cultural weaknesses, intelligence gathering, soul harvesting. Richardson learned that Cytherians could be broken without physical violence, that our minds could be shattered by the right combination of isolation, shame, and hopelessness. Zephyr's mechanical arm stopped moving entirely. By the 3rd year of war, human commanders knew exactly how to destroy Cytherian morale. They would target specific individuals, exploit personal relationships, turn our own emotions against us. The humans had learned to fight on multiple levels: physical, mental, emotional, cultural, technological. They had turned war into a science. Every battle was an experiment. Every defeat was a lesson. Every victory was data for the next. Engagement. The alien looked at his reflection in the table's surface. That was when we began to fear them. Not just their weapons or their tactics, we feared what they represented, which was evolution. The humans were evolving faster than we could adapt, growing stronger with each battle while we grew weaker. They had become something new, something we had never faced before. Zephyr met Velanara's eyes. They had become the perfect predator. Velanara noticed her hands were shaking slightly. She set down her stylus and looked at Zephyr. How did it end? The veteran was quiet for a long moment. His mechanical arm moved in slow circles, a nervous habit he had developed after the war. General Alex Murphy changed everything. Before him, humans fought defensively, protecting their colonies. Reacting to our attacks, Murphy made them into hunters. He was different from the others. Murphy had been planning for 3 years. While other human commanders fought individual battles, he prepared for total war. He studied every engagement, every tactic, every mistake on both sides. Then he built something that should have been impossible. Zephyr's compound eyes focused on the metal table. A human fleet designed specifically to destroy the Cytherian Empire. Not defend against it, destroy it completely. The humans went on the offensive. Admiral Sandra Kim commanded Murphy's Space Forces. She had been a cargo pilot before the war, someone who moved supplies between human colonies. But Murphy saw something in her that others missed. The alien's voice grew heavy with memory. Kim understood space better than any Catherian admiral. She knew how ships moved through the void, how gravity affected navigation, how to use asteroid fields and stellar phenomena as weapons. Natural space warfare? Kim could make space itself fight for her. She would hide fleets inside nebulae, use planetary gravity to slingshot attacks, position her ships so that enemy fire would hit asteroids and create deadly debris fields. Zephyr stood and walked to the window again. The stars outside seemed cold and hostile now. But Kim's greatest skill was patience. She would spend months positioning her forces, moving ships like pieces on a game board, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Strategic planning? Murphy and Kim had spent 2 years preparing for one target, the most heavily defended world in the Catherian Empire. Our homeworld of Zarthal, Velinara's stylus clattered to the floor. They attacked your homeworld? It should have been suicide. Zarthal was protected by 6 defensive fleets, orbital weapons platforms, planetary shield generators, ground-based missiles. No enemy had ever come within 10 light years of our home system. The veteran turned back to face her. Murphy knew. It was impossible. That was why he chose it. He wanted to prove that humans could do the impossible, that nothing in the galaxy could stop them once they decided to act. How did they plan such an attack? Commander Tony Martinez led the advanced scouts, former merchant marine turned military strategist. His job was to map every defense around Zarthal without being detected. Zephyr's mechanical fingers drummed against the window. Martinez spent 8 months infiltrating our outer systems. His ships looked like cargo vessels, moved like civilian traffic, but they were recording everything. Intelligence gathering missions? Martinez had learned to think like a trader while fighting like a warrior. His people would dock at Catherian stations pretending to be merchants. All the while, they were studying our defenses, learning guard rotations, mapping weapon positions. The alien returned to his chair. But Martinez did something more dangerous than spying. He tested our responses. His ships would have faked mechanical problems near our defense stations. Emergency. Stops that let them study our reaction times? The humans were probing for weaknesses. Every emergency was a test. How fast did our patrols respond? Which areas had gaps in coverage? How did our commanders communicate during crisis situations? Martinez turned every interaction into intelligence. Zephyr's shell darkened with shame. We helped them. Catherian station commanders would assist these fake merchant vessels, give them supplies, provide repair services, all while they studied us like laboratory specimens. They used your own hospitality against you? Martinez understood that Catherians valued trade and commerce, that we would help civilian ships in distress regardless of species. He weaponized our cultural values. The veteran paused to drink more water. His throat felt dry as dust. After 8 months, Martinez had complete maps of our home system, every weapon, every ship, every blind spot. He gave Murphy the keys to our most secure stronghold. Then the attack began. Kim's fleet appeared at the edge of Zarthal system on a Tuesday morning. 150 human ships against 600 Catherian defenders. Our admirals thought it was another desperate raid, something they could crush quickly. Zephyr's compound eyes flickered with remembered horror. But these humans fought differently. Kim had divided her fleet into waves. Each wave had a specific mission. The first wave was not meant to win. It was meant to learn. Learning attacks? Commander Billy Ross led the first assault. His orders were simple. Attack the outer defenses, record everything. Die if necessary, but send the data home first. The alien's voice grew quiet. Ross understood his mission perfectly. His ships charged directly at our strongest positions. They were destroyed within minutes. But every second of combat was recorded and transmitted back to Kim's main fleet. Suicide. Reconnaissance? Strategic sacrifice? Ross and his people died to give Kim the information she needed. Real combat data, actual response times, precise weapon ranges, everything Martinez could not learn from observation alone. Zephyr's mechanical arm clicked faster. The second wave came 6 hours later. Commander Janet Foster led 50 ships against our middle defenses, but Foster knew exactly where to strike, how to avoid our strongest weapons, which positions to attack first. The humans were adapting in real time. Foster had studied Ross's battle data during the flight to target. She knew which Catherian positions were most dangerous, which areas had overlapping fields of fire. Where the blind spots were located, the veteran's voice cracked slightly. Foster's people lasted 3 times longer than Ross's wave. They destroyed twice as many defense platforms, and they sent back even more detailed intelligence. More learning? Foster had discovered something crucial. Our defensive network was controlled by a central computer system. Destroy the right. Nodes and entire sectors would go dark. She transmitted the locations of these control centers before her fleet was destroyed. Zephyr looked directly at Velinara. That was when we realized what Murphy had created. Not just a fleet, but a learning organism. Each wave of attacks made the next wave smarter, deadlier, more precise. How many waves were there? 7. By the 7th wave, Kim's remaining ships knew more about our defenses than our own commanders. They moved through our formations like they had been planning the attack for decades. The interview room seemed to grow colder. The final wave was led by Kim herself. 20 ships against our entire home fleet. But those 20 ships fought. Like they could see the future? Predictive tactics? Kim knew exactly where every Catherian ship would be. What orders our admirals would give. How long each engagement would last. Her people moved through our defenses like water flowing downhill. Zephyr's shell grew pale. In 6 hours, 20 human ships destroyed the most powerful fleet in Catherian history. Not through superior numbers or better weapons. Through perfect knowledge. They had learned your patterns? Everything. Kim's fleet reached Zarthal orbit and aimed their weapons at our homeworld. One message came from the flagship. General Murphy himself, speaking in perfect Catherian. The veteran's voice dropped to a whisper. He said we had one choice. Surrender now or watch our homeworld burn. But then he said something that still haunts me. What did he say? That this was just the beginning, that humans now knew how to destroy any Catherian world, that they would hunt us across the galaxy until every last one of us was dead, unless we chose peace. Zephyr met her eyes. Murphy had turned war into science, and we were his test subjects. Zephyr sat in silence for several minutes. His mechanical arm had stopped clicking. The interview room felt heavy with unspoken memories. Velinara waited, knowing that the hardest part of the story was still to come. The war ended with a treaty. Signing, the veteran finally said. General Murphy came down to Zarthal's surface with just 12 guards. He walked into our high command building like he owned it. He was not afraid. Murphy smiled when he met our supreme commander. Actually, smiled, like he was greeting an old friend instead of the leader of his enemies. That smile was more terrifying than any weapon. Zephyr's compound eyes focused on something beyond the room. Murphy brought the peace terms himself, written in perfect Catherian script, legal language that would have taken our best scholars. Months to compose, he had prepared everything in advance. What were the terms? Simple. The Catherian Empire would end all military operations against humanity. We would share technology and establish trade relations. In return, humans would not destroy our remaining worlds. The alien shifted uncomfortably. But Murphy made one thing very clear. This was not a negotiation. It was a choice between survival and extinction. He threatened genocide. He stated facts. Murphy showed us computer models of how human fleets could systematically destroy every Catherian world, step-by-step plans. Detailed timelines, resource calculations. He had turned our annihilation into a logistics problem. Zephyr's voice grew quiet. The most frightening part was how polite he was about it. Murphy explained that humans preferred peace to war. That cooperation would benefit both species. But if we chose conflict, he would execute every Catherian in the galaxy without hesitation. This convinced your leaders? Captain Billy Ross stood behind Murphy during the signing. The same Ross who had led the first suicide wave against our defenses, except he was not dead. He had ejected from his ship at the last moment and been rescued by later waves. The veteran's shell darkened. Ross looked at our Supreme Commander and said that dying for humanity was easy. Living for humanity was much harder, but both were just tools to achieve victory. The humans had planned everything, including their own deaths. Ross explained that every pilot in the first wave had volunteered for what they thought was a suicide mission. But Murphy had secret rescue teams standing by. Humans who appeared to die heroically were actually gathering intelligence for future battles. Zephyr stood and walked to the window one final time. That was when we understood the true horror of fighting humans. They could make their own deaths into weapons, turn sacrifice into strategy, make heroism serve tactics. The treaty was signed within 1 hour. Our Supreme Commander had no choice, but Murphy did something that still confuses me. He invited 12 Catherian officers to join the human fleet. As advisors, Velinara looked up from her notes. Advisors? Colonel Nancy Webb ran the Human Military Academy on their homeworld. She wanted Catherian officers to teach classes on alien warfare, help train the next generation of human soldiers. The aliens' mechanical fingers began their nervous tapping again. Webb understood that the war with us was just practice, that humans would face other enemies in the future. She wanted to learn everything possible from our defeat. They were preparing for future wars? Always. Strategic analyst Peter Clark had spent the entire war documenting every battle, every tactic, every lesson learned. He turned our conflict into a textbook for human military schools. Zephyr returned to his chair for the last time. Clark interviewed captured Catherian officers, recorded their memories, analyzed their strategies. He created the most complete military database in galactic history. To study your weaknesses? To study war itself. Clark learned that every species fights differently, has different strengths and fears, different cultural values that can be exploited. He made warfare into a science that could be applied to any enemy. The veteran's voice grew heavy with fatigue. Within 5 years of the treaty, human military advisors were working for dozens of species across the galaxy, teaching them how to fight more effectively, how to think strategically, how to turn any conflict into a learning opportunity. The humans became teachers, the galaxy's most dangerous teachers. Ambassador Carol Price established human military colleges on 40 different worlds, each one staffed by veterans from our war. Zephyr's compound eyes dimmed. Price understood something that still scares me. Knowledge is the ultimate weapon. Humans could sell their military expertise to anyone willing to pay. Make themselves indispensable to every major power. They weaponized their own experience. Director Andy Cooper runs the Human Mercenary Corps. Former logistics officer who learned that war is really about moving resources efficiently. His people will fight for anyone who meets their price. The alien looked directly at Velinara. But Cooper's mercenaries do not just fight. They study their employers, learn their tactics, document their weaknesses. Every contract makes humanity smarter about galactic warfare. They are still learning? Always learning. Captain Steve Miller commands the Human Embassy Guard here on this station. Former Marine who fought in 12 battles during our war. He watches everyone, studies every species that visits, adds to their database constantly. Zephyr's mechanical arm stopped moving entirely. Miller knows more about galactic military capabilities than most intelligence agencies. And he shares everything with Human Command. They treat peace like preparation for the next war. Are you afraid of them? Every intelligent species should be afraid of humans. Not because they are cruel or violent, because they are efficient. They have turned warfare into a repeatable process that can destroy any enemy. The veteran's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But the most terrifying thing about humans is not their military skill, it is their patience. They are willing to wait decades for the right opportunity. Generations if necessary. Long-term planning. Admiral Sandra Kim now runs human deep space exploration. Her ships travel to the edge of known space, mapping new systems and cataloging potential resources. She claims it is scientific research. Zephyr met the archivist, eyes one final time, but I know what Kim is really doing. She is looking for the next enemy, preparing for wars that have not started yet, making sure humanity will be ready when the shooting begins. You believe there will be more wars? There are always more wars. The galaxy is full of ambitious species, territorial disputes, resource, conflicts, religious differences. Somewhere out there, someone is planning to challenge human power. The alien stood slowly, his old wounds aching. When that happens, they will discover what we learned too late. Humans do not just fight wars, they perfect them. Every battle makes them stronger, every defeat teaches them something new. And the next enemy will lose? Unless they learn from our mistakes. Unless they understand that fighting humans is not about winning battles. It is about surviving the education process. Zephyr walked toward the door, then paused. The humans wanted me to give this interview. Ambassador Price specifically requested that I tell our story to the Council archives. Why? Because they want everyone to know exactly what they are. Capable of, not as a threat, but as a promise. Cross humanity and face the same fate we did, but cooperate and benefit from the peace they offer. The veteran's mechanical hand touched the door control. I learned something during those terrible years. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy, not the smartest or the most advanced, but they are the most dangerous. Because of their technology? Because they never stop learning? Never stop adapting. Never stop preparing for the next challenge. They have made evolution into a weapon. Zephyr paused at the threshold. The galaxy is safer with humans as allies. But never forget what they really are underneath all their talk of peace and cooperation. What are they? The perfect predator, and they are always hunting. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving Velinara alone with her notes and the terrible knowledge they contained.